In this video, I am presenting my third assignment working with Pandas data frame. First, I start by creating a Python dictionary called data. In this dictionary, I loaded the data about student exam results. Using this dictionary, I created a Pandas data frame called scores. Here is the data frame that I created using the dictionary. Since this is a data frame about student exam results, it would be appropriate to index this data using the corresponding student names. So to index the data, I use the index property in the Pandas data frame function. If I wanted to access my data frame using the student name, I can use the log function. In case I wanted to use my access my data frame according to the row index, I can use the ilog function. Next, I am going to demonstrate the various operations that can be performed on a Pandas data frame. So if I wanted to find the number of non-null values in each column, I can use the count function. If I wanted to find the middle number in each column, I can use the median function. So if I wanted to find the minimum and maximum values in each column, I can use the min and max function. The describe function summarizes the data in the dataset by computing our values such as count, mean or standard deviation and displaying them in a table format. Next, we'll see how to use the external sources of data like CSV or XLSS to create a Pandas data frame. Here I use the student performance dataset from Kaggle. So I created a Pandas data frame using the function called read CSV, and I use the students.shape function to display the number of rows and columns in the dataset. Next, I use the head function to display the top portion of the data. In this example, I specify the number of rows to be displayed equal to 5. So, and the data frame will only display the top 5 rows of data. Next, the tail function returns the bottom portion of the data. So I specify that a number of rows displayed equal to 5. So it will display only the bottom 5 rows in the data. Since we used a data set from an external source, it's best to check for null values in the data set. First, I find the number of null values in the dataset by using SNull function. Here it specifies the three columns as null values. I can remove the null values using either using drop NA function or fill NA function. In this scenario, I use the fill NA function since the number of missing items is far less. So I fill the null values using the median values in the corresponding columns. Next, I use the dataframe.core function to display the correlation matrix. Then I use the correlation matrix to draw a heat map. By looking into the heat map, we can see our the relationship between different numerical columns in our dataset. Next, I use the count plot function to display the number of times a unique category occurs in a categorical variable. Next, I use the hisplot to plot the distribution of my numerical variables. Then I used a box plot to display the distribution and skewness of my data. A box plot can also be used to display any outliers in my dataset. In my Python file, first I loaded the necessary modules like Pandas and Seaborn. Then I used the Pandas module to create a data frame from my Python dictionary. Then I recreated the data frame using the index property to specify the student names in my dataset. I can use either log or ilog function to access a row of data in my dataset. Then I use the count function to display the number of non-null values in each columns in my dataset. Then I use the min and max function to display the minimum and maximum function in each columns in my dataset. Next, I loaded a dataset from an external source using a CSV file. I downloaded this dataset from a Kaggle competition. This dataset has information about on how things like gender, race, or ethnicity affects the performance of a students in a test. Then I use the head and tail function to display the top and bottom portion of the dataset. Before we work on the dataset, it's best to handle the null values in the dataset. So I use the isNull function to find the number of null values in each columns in the dataset. We can see that columns math score, reading score, and writing score has null values. So I can either drop the rows with null values, or fill them with user specified value. I decided to fill the null values with the medium value in the column. Then I use the dataframe.core function to find to display the correlation matrix, and using the correlation matrix I created a heat map. We can see that since the exam scores are closely related to each student's aptitude, these scores are highly correlated. First I use the count plot to display the number of categories in a categorical variable. The count plot also displays the number of occurrence of a category in a categorical variable. Then I use the hist plot to display the distribution of the numerical variables in my dataset. Then I use the box plot to display the distribution and skewness of the data in my dataset. Here I use the box plot on the variable parental level of education and the average total score. We can see that the students with parents who hold a college or master's degree score on average score more than the students whose parents does not have a college degree. Then I use the box plot on the text preparation course column. We can see that a student who took the test preparation course scored higher than the on average scored higher than the students who do not take the test preparation course. Thank you.